Welcome to Ask April and Cindy from the Travel Collective. This is our destination series.
All right, thanks for joining us tonight. We've got Beverly, who has over 42 years of teaching. So you can just imagine she's taught everybody something in her life is the way I look at it. I mean, that's a whole lifetime. So I'm excited. And she's also a world traveler. She's been to kind of never step foot on continents. Who knows with everything going on if we'll get the pleasure to go there. But tonight we're excited to hear about Cuba. She's been to Cuba 3 times. So thanks for joining us, Beverly. How are you doing today?
Fine. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. My first time.
Yeah. So tell us why you chose Cuba. What drew you to Cuba?
Yeah, I chose Cuba because at the time everybody was buzzing, about, oh, let's go to Cuba. We want to go to Cuba. So there was a real high interest in Cuba. So I went on the internet. My first trip, I went on the internet and I obviously found this site about Cuba. I didn't know these people and I called them and talked to them. Her name was Nancy, the leader, tour leader. And it sounded good. And so I paid my money and I went. It was also at the time President Obama. I can't remember if he was closing Cuba down or opening Cuba, and it was kind of hard to go. So I said, well, I better go now before anything happens. And whatever he did, just so happened we had turned in all our paperwork in time, so we were not affected. People behind us would have been affected.
Well, that's great. So then you returned to Cuba, though. So what drew you to go back the second and third times?
The second time I came back telling everybody about Cuba, and some friends of mine were saying, well, there's a concert that they have every year. And I go, what? Yeah, I want to check that out. So my friend gave me a name of a young man that's in New York. And he goes every year, but he goes not just for the jazz festival, but other times of the year as well. That's his job. He's a travel agent. And he has with a Afro-Latina that is a travel agent out of Whittier. And they have connected together. And so they have trips going, especially during that time for the jazz festival. So that's always interesting. And like I was telling you, April, when I went there, for the outside concert, half of LA was there. So a lot of times you get there and you see a bunch of Americans going.
Right. So the third time, what took you back the third time?
Oh boy. Stop laughing, April. The third time I wanted to find more. I had to learn the term. Like I said, I was going asking Black Cubans or African American Cubans or, Negro Cubans. And people were looking at me like, what are you talking about? The term. And that's one of the things you learn when you travel. We have to use whatever the lingo they're using to understand each other. And I had to realize the term was Cuban. And then they went, oh, we know what you're talking about. So I found out, I was basically, when I went the first couple of times, Havana, which is the city, the big city. But I found out most of the Afro-Cubans are in a place called Santiago, which is a couple of hours. So that's where I went the third time. And also they have a festival every year that's almost like New Orleans. And it's in July and August. And so that's why I went the third time.
Wow. So you kind of answered my second question, which is when did you go? You've gone different times over the 3 trips. So of the 3 times, can you tell me what time of year would probably be best in your mind? Or does it depend on what you want to see, as you kind of mentioned?
Yeah, no, I realized December was the 2 times. The first time it was December and it was closer to, it was after Christmas, but it went into New Year's because we were supposed to go to a New Year's concert and stuff. And then the second time I went again, it was December, but that's when they have the jazz concert every year. And then the third time was, like I said, July and August. So let me see. I think it was the first time it was cool, but it wasn't cold. It might have rained a little bit, but not to the point of an umbrella. But the second time, the jazz concert, they had a storm. I told April I was out there trying to be a photographer at the Malachi with the wind whipping and the rain whipping at me, trying to get pictures of the waves coming over the Malachi, which is a concrete wall by the beach. So, yeah, you have to look at that now. The third time was July and August, which is, warm time, but I don't think I had any problems with mosquitoes or anything. So it depends on what you want to do. I'm not really into cold weather. It wasn't really freezing there, but it did make a difference to me, what time of year. Like I said, I liked the festival, and I liked being in Santiago. The festival is also in Santiago.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So tell us, who did you travel with?
Okay, the first one is called Cuba Travel, and the young lady, the lady was, all I know is her name is Nancy, but that was the name of the company. And when you go to Cuba, you have to get a certificate. You have to have a reason for going. You just can't show up. You need to have a reason because the government wants to know why you're. That one was people to people, but they do all the paperwork for you. And then the next one was Malamar Travels, which is Juanita Sims. And like I said, she's an Afro-Latina, and she is from Cuba. So that's one of the tips I always like, going with somebody that's from there or really know the place, because they can show you the off the beaten path places you wouldn't know of. And she did exactly that. Like I said, you had the tour in the daytime, but because she wanted to go out, because she would say, okay, I'm going to this jazz club, I'm going to dinner, do you want to go? Meet me downtown, meet me downstairs at the hotel at 6 p.m. when we're leaving, and the bus would take us. And the third time was the African American Association.
well, maybe that's the one you wanted to advise people on. I'm not sure.
Stay away from this one. Let me say it again: the African American Association. I was duped into thinking that because it had that title, that they were going to give us more of an experience of the Afro-Cubans. Unfortunately, the man kind of went, so it didn't work out so well. So most of us in the group have traveled before, so we kind of ended up having to do our own thing to a certain extent. The saying is, when life serves you lemon, make lemonade. So we just made the best of it.
Yeah. So did you meet locals? It sounds like that's kind of the slant when you go to Cuba, is that you're meeting locals. So can you share some about meeting the locals?
Yes, absolutely. The locals are just delightful. They're very friendly. They're very helpful. You can ask anybody anything about where is this, where is that. I befriended a tour guide. Oh, Lord. I thought Alexander. And that's one of the tips that I have for travelers is that collect names and birds or flyers of places you enjoyed or you like. When I travel now, I make a folder. So when April called me, all I had to do was pull out my Cuba folder. I have everything that I wanted to keep. I go through it when I come home and sort it. But I just kind of grab stuff as I'm going. But especially if it's something you really like and you want to go back. Just like I have two friends that went to Cuba and they immediately asked me and I gave them my folder, but I was able to change the numbers of people that were there. And they had, I didn't go with them. So they had a wonderful time. But Alexander was just absolutely wonderful. Once you get someone that you feel comfortable with and doesn't charge you a lot, then you need to go with that person. And, you can ask them what are some things that I should see that I'm here, and I always tell people kind of do your homework ahead of time too and find out what you're interested in, what you want to see. But he just would take me everywhere I wanted to go. Didn't have to worry about anything. And that was his job. He was a tour guide and a driver. In fact, he lives in Santiago. So I guess he must come up to Havana for a couple of days and then he goes back home. Because when I called him last time and told him I was in Santiago, he said, I live in Santiago. I'm like, what? So because I've been, every time I went, I contacted him. So he said, next time you can come stay with me. And I was all of that because that's when you're going to get the real experience when you're living with somebody. So,
right.
I mean, you're going to pay them just like you would a hotel, but then you're not going to be, you're going to get the real family experience.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about how you planned the trips?
Okay, like I said, the first time I just went on the internet because I kept hearing about Cuba and I asked people. I was interested in Cuba. Like I said, everybody was going. So the thing is, like I said, I always kind of do my homework in the sense of what does Cuba offer? What are the activities? So, and I print them out. Mm-hmm. And also, if there's something that you want to go to, like a festival or arts and crafts, you need to look at those days and times because a lot of times, if you're planning a trip, if it's something you really want to go see, and if it's on Wednesday and you don't come till Thursday, then you've missed it. So you need to, look at that and see that so that because a lot of times I had to go off the beaten path by myself. I didn't stay with the group all the time because it might have been something I wanted to see. So I would just tell them, okay, I'm going to see this. What time do we meet back for lunch or dinner or, when's the next tour or whatever. But kind of do your own homework first, your research, so you know what you want to see. Because the worst back, and I've had that happen to me, come back and somebody says, oh, did you see such and such while you were there? And I'm like, see what? So, you got to find out the things that are interesting to you. Just like April said, I'm a teacher, so I wanted to go to the schools, but unfortunately schools were out because it was summer. But I would go to some of the schools of dance and music and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So the second, who planned that one? You mentioned, I think earlier you were mentioning how much you loved the second trip.
Oh, yeah. The second trip was Juanita Sims. Her name is Juanita Sims, and she's Miramar Travels and Tour, and she's out of Whittier, California, Marmar. And she's out of Whittier, California. She lives here in Los Angeles. And once you contact them, they will do everything that you can make payments, and they will let you know what paperwork you need, or you need a copy of a passport or anything like that. So when you go with a travel agency, they kind of do everything. That's why you're paying them. They kind of do everything for you, so you don't have to worry about that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So are there any special items you would suggest packing or taking with you when you go to Cuba?
I have a problem with mosquitoes. I don't remember having a problem with them, but like I told April, I always take mosquito repellent and a bottle of alcohol. And the reason I take the alcohol is because it depends on if you're traveling, if you're out, in a remote area, you're not going to be able to get anything like that. So if you can take it with you, I don't open it. It's still sealed and I keep it wrapped up. So I use it while I'm there. But something that you're not sure if you're going to be able to find readily, because like I said, there's not a lot of, if you're in the city of Havana, there's no problem because you're in the city. But if you're talking about Santiago, remote area, you're not going to find pharmacies readily available or grocery stores. So my two things are the mosquito repellent, alcohol, and Dramamine, because I have problems with water, with seasickness. And so my trip, one of the trips I went on, they said, we're going to lunch. And I was like, okay. And I get on the bus and all of a sudden they go to this ferry. And I said, where are you guys going? And they go, oh, we got to go across the river on the ferry. And I'm like, I'm not getting in that water. I'll get seasick. So I was saying, another thing I learned is to keep any kind of medicine on your person at all times. If you need to take something, take it with you. It was in my suitcase, in my medicine, suitcase, but it wasn't on me person where I could take it right then.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. So what are some of the favorite dishes, or does Cuba have regional dishes that you would recommend or make sure that people sample when they...
I did not find anything. Like I said, when my friends Eleanor and Elma went, there was some dish that they liked, and they wanted to find the Cuban grocery store out here, the market, and get the seasonings and make it. They said it was so good, but I'm not a picky eater. So basically, it was rice, beans, and meat, chicken, fish, chicken, beef, fish, and lobster and shrimp. And like I said, when we went with Juanita and she was taking us to some really nice high-end restaurants, I was telling April that the lobster did not cost any more than the other meal. And we were all in shock. We were like, what? You're kidding. It's not more expensive? And it wasn't. So when you went in with the group, she would come over and tell you what was being offered. And when the server comes over to ask you to place your order.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some of the things that you recommend not to miss when you go to Cuba?
Well, I'm a shopper. There is a flea market that is by the water if you're in Havana and you're close to the hotel I stayed in the first time was called Hotel Park Central Park. I try to remember it with New York. And it's right in the center and you can walk. But this flea market, you have to take a little cocoa, which is a little cab, and you go there and it looks like a large airplane hangar. That's how large it is. And you just go up and down the aisles and you can find anything. If you want your souvenirs, that is the place to go. Because you can get little purses and all kind of little trinkets and art and anything you can think of, they have it right there. So that's the one-stop shop, and it's called a flea market. There's also a smaller one that's outdoors. That's arts and crafts. It is by all you have to do is tell them by the college. Now, the thing with that is, again, it's only there a certain day. So again, when you talk to the locals and you ask them, they can kind of tell you like it's Thursday from 10 to 4. So you have to know that you go over there and not going to be there. And they also love you to, and you get bargains there depending on how much you're buying and to barter with them. That's another thing. One of the other things I didn't know the first time I went, because I'm not a drinker or anything, was Sloppy Joe's was a big place to go. It's like I think it's like a bar.
Oh.
And some of the ladies were saying, oh, you got to go to Sloppy Joe's. And I'm like, what is that? And they were saying, oh, that's well known. So we went to that and had mojito, which I told them without the liquor, and everybody looked at me like I was crazy. And then there's the one I liked. I'm trying to think. No, this was the third time I went. And it's called La Zora El Cuevo, and it's a jazz club, and it's really nice. And it's really interesting because the entrance looks like an old telephone booth. It's red.
Wow.
And it looks like an old telephone booth. And when you open the door, then there's stairs and you go down. And one thing I could say about Cuba, be ready to dance because everybody's going to dance with you. As a matter of fact, when we went as the group, they did a performance and all that, but they're very interactive. And they want to pull you up there and get you dancing. I got up there and I was shaking the maracas, all that kind of stuff. So anytime you go to a show, unless it's a big one, like I went to the Flamingo, I think it's a Flamingo. That's just a show that they do. You watch. But if you go to one that's kind of intimate and dinner theater, they're going to get you up. You drum or something or salsa or something, they'll grab you to go up there.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So would you recommend to people to go during the jazz festival? Is that something to kind of, is that like a big attraction to go or?
Yeah, that is a big attraction to go. But of course, again, it needs to be something, if you're really into jazz, or for jazz lovers. One thing I thought was interesting is I think Juanita had taken us to a jazz club and we were sitting there listening to the music and, people were having drinks and all that. And then we went to the jazz concert because it's different days and at certain time. Went to a jazz concert. It was the same person that we saw in the club. And we thought that was nice. And then also, because it's a big deal, the concerts are all over. It's not just in one location, one at a hotel and one, outdoors and, they're all over the place. So you kind of have to look at your schedule and figure out where you want to go, try to get the most. Once you buy the pass, we had a pass that you put around your neck. And once you buy that, that's your entrance and you can go anywhere.
Gotcha. What was New Year's like? You mentioned you went at New Year's the one year. Are there big celebrations or tell us a little bit about the New Year's? Because I think
it's very different. The first year I went, that was the big takeaway is to go. And so Nancy was like, okay, it's going to cost this much because it's interest, food, drinks, unlimited. Unfortunately, the group decided they didn't want to pay the money, even though she had already told them. So it wasn't bad. Like I said, you just kind of go with the flow. So the way they had it, it was just barricaded with a gate. So you could stand outside. We ended up standing outside the gate, and you could still hear the music and see everybody dancing and all that kind of stuff. But what I realized was that it was really for the foreigners. It was not for the Cubans. The Cubans, they can care less. Like I said, I befriended a couple of people, and one of them was a young guy that was the doorman, opened the door for you for the hotel. And I said, "Let's do for New Year's." And he said, "What are you talking about? I'm building a house. So every spare minute I have, I'm working on my house." So I'm saying all that to say they spend their time with their family. They don't go out. They don't go out drinking or, and all that kind of stuff with what we consider. So when we saw all that, it was all the foreigners. It was all the Europeans and foreigners. It was not a lot of Cubans unless they were working.
See, I think that's very fascinating that you know.
It was 2 days. It was January 1st and January 2nd. Because I think we were trying to go shopping again on the 2nd, and they said, "Oh, everything's closed. We celebrate the 1st and the 2nd." So again, that's something you have to think about. And my thing is, I hate to waste time. So that's what I'm taught. Their holidays and their traditions, because that's a free day. Because most of the stuff is closed, so you can do other things. Sitting just because it's certain things are closed and I can't go anywhere. No, you can do other things. So
right. So do you have some travel lessons that you learned from your travels to Cuba that you think are important to share?
Yes. Do not take your U.S. customs. Please don't do that. Like Eleanor and I were saying, there's a difference between a traveler and a tourist. When you're going to another country, you need to learn what's going on, what their customs are, what their traditions are. As the old saying is, when in Rome, do as the Romans. Because, just like I said, I learned I was running around asking for Black Cubans, and they were looking at me like I was crazy until I said, Afro-Cuban. So, see, it's the language. So that's one of the things I learned. One of the things I was saying is kind of off of Cuba, but when I went to Kenya, I fooled around and bought a Maasai blanket because I went to the village, and when we went to have lunch, everybody in the restaurant stopped, and I didn't understand why. And so one of the guys that could speak English told me he saw the red Maasai blanket. He thought I was a Maasai. So again, you have to find out what their customs are. And also, you don't want to hotel mark. Okay. You don't want to insult anyone, you know.
Right.
So that was one of the things. But just, just kind of watch and kind of know what's going on. Learn a couple of little, if you don't know Spanish, learn a couple of little, greetings at least, You don't have a problem with English, but of course they would appreciate it more if you did speak some Spanish.
Right.
And so that kind of gets them talking once you speak to them in Spanish.
Right. Did you have some photography tips to share? I think you shared a couple tips about photographing, if I recall, too.
Oh, like I said, I was out there when they had the storm, trying to get a picture of the waves coming over the embankment. I thought that was so wonderful. So that was it. And then you got to be careful because it's raining, not to get your lens wet, so you need to cover that up. And then when you go to certain countries, you just can't go around just snapping pictures, willy-nilly. People have different traditions. So you should not, as a rule, just, especially if you're taking individual pictures, if you see somebody and you're looking right at them and they know you're taking a picture, you have to be careful because people have different religious beliefs and cultures. And in an African culture, Africans think you are going to do something wrong with the photograph. They're not thinking of paparazzi in the sense of, you're going to sell it or you're going to get money. They're thinking you're going to do something wrong with it. So just to be polite, if you really want a picture, just go up and ask them, politely, can you take a picture? And they'll say yes or no. And like anybody, you're not looking your best. You don't want anybody taking a picture. But then also, like I said, because you're touring and Cuba is like anywhere else, a place that they're trying to make ends meet. When you're taking pictures of people, they want to be paid. When you're the young ladies that are all dressed up, when you're walking around, they have their attire on and they come up to you, you think they're being friendly, which they are, but after you take that picture, they don't want to tip. And the same thing with the lady that sits there with the cigar. Everybody's always, they think that's so cool to see the woman with the cigar. Again, if you take a picture with her, she's going to want to tip. I was walking down the street and musicians were coming down the street, really colorful and singing and dancing and away taking pictures. And all of a sudden, one of the sisters just walked over me and put her hand out. Like, you didn't give me a tip. I just saw you take my picture. Give me some money, So you just got to be cognizant of that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's some really wonderful information. So, do you think you'll be returning to Cuba at some point?
Oh yeah, like I said, when I go back, I definitely want to go to Santiago and just really hang out. I feel very comfortable there. I want to go there. And I also want to go to, we were close. Santiago is a couple of hours from Guantanamo Bay, which is that prison. I don't want to go into prison, but I did want to take a picture. Wasn't able, and see, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. If you're not with a group of people that kind of like the same things you're like, you're kind of by yourself to a certain extent. Wasn't with me, so I couldn't say to him, okay, take me to Guantanamo Bay, but I know if he was, I would have been able to go. We did go to the Hemingway house. Now, see, again, I didn't even know Hemingway was there. That's where he lived most of his life. And we went there. And then after, they have young men outside that actually cut coconuts, and you can get fresh coconut milk right there. The first time we went to a tobacco farm. And that was interesting. We met the farmer and his grandson. He's so cute. His grandson looked like he's like 5, but he's teaching him the ropes of how to farm on a tobacco farm. And then that trip, we also stayed with a family, which I thought was nice for a couple of days. You actually stayed in their home, and they cooked you the breakfast and dinner. And another tip I always tell people, take business cards with you if you want to exchange information with people instead of trying to write it down on a little piece of paper, and collect business cards, and take tablets and pens and pencils with you. Because when you see something, you want to be able to write it, take a picture or however. And the hotel we stayed in, which was Hotel Nacional, that was with Juanita, that is one of the most famous hotels there. And that's where all the movie stars are. I'm looking at my pictures right now. Everybody that's anybody has been there, and they have their pictures all up on the wall. Now, the Lincoln Hotel, which is the one I was telling April about, do not go there. It's not a good place. It's called the Lincoln Hotel. So if you ever hear that, don't go there. Like I said, do your homework. Okay, also, I don't know if I'm talking to seasoned travelers or not, but do not spend all your money toward the end of your trip. And the reason is a $25 departure tax to come out. Now, I don't remember if they took U.S. or with, their money, but that's just a tip. Don't do that. Yeah. The Tropicana Club, that was the one where they show you, the ladies with the big hair dress and all that. They put you to shame because their bodies are, woo, my God. I'm like, oh, I know I need to go to the gym after seeing this. But, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, my God. That sounds like a fabulous, fabulous trip that you've had to Cuba.
It was, yes. I would definitely go back. But like I said, Santiago.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing, Beverly, about Cuba.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you. So we're going to open it up now, and if anyone's got any questions, they can type in some questions, ask some questions, and we'll see if we can answer those for you. Yep.
Okay, so we're back to answer questions, and we'll just give a minute. Oh, we have a couple questions already. So, Bev, I'm going to ask. So, Victoria says, great info. What is the most unique thing you noticed about Cuba or the Cuban people?
The most unique thing?
Yeah.
Is that what you said?
She asked what was the most unique thing about Cuba or the Cuban people?
That they're, I won't say unique, but they're very friendly.
Okay.
Very friendly, very family orientated. They're inviting. They're not standoffish when you meet them. They come up to you and talk to you and want to engage you. So I thought that was really, I felt comfortable there.
Wonderful. Great. Mm-hmm. And then Sheila asked a question. I think it was during the earlier part of the show. You said something it says, do not take what? And so the sound kind of dropped off. Did you mention something earlier about something not to tell people not to take?
Oh, was it pictures?
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, right.
Yes, being careful of taking pictures. Yeah, just not to when you see people just take pictures willy-nilly, because just being respectful. You need to ask people, is it all right if I take your picture? Like I said, a lot of people might have beliefs that, they want to know what you want to do with the picture. They're not thinking paparazzi. They're thinking maybe you want to do something that's not too good to them. So they're usually a little concerned. They want to know why you're taking their picture. You might be taking it innocently, but they don't know.
Right.
So just out of respect and communication, I would always ask them first.
Great. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good tip.
It is, and it's a good tip for everywhere, Bev. That's it's really nice to ask. And I don't have any other questions, but I was going to say that's a nice way to start a conversation with a local, is just to ask if you can take their picture. Oftentimes somebody will chat you up a little bit and ask where you're from and that kind of thing, just by, asking. Okay, I have Leo said, did you mostly take street photography, or were there opportunities to shoot local architecture and historical places and landscape?
Both, all of those, because you're on a tour, you're going all over the city. And so, they have a lot of museums. Everything is based on artistry. So music, art, paintings, dancing, singing, all of that. Now that's a place, of course, they expect you to take pictures. You won't have any problem. But yeah, people walking around, just the natives just walking up and down doing, regular things, take pictures of that. So I had a conglomerate of pictures.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And then Sheila just says, thanks, Beverly. The info was delightful, definitely helpful. So we've got some good thanks. I've totally enjoyed it. And I've been to Cuba, but I've really enjoyed listening to you talk, Bev. It's been wonderful.
Yeah, sounds like a fabulous trip, Bev. I'm jealous. I wanted to go ride in the cars, the old classic.
Yeah.
You got to take a spin in.
Really, you're just like a little kid when you do that. Like, oh my God, you can pick your own color.
It's a beautiful city. Okay, well, I don't see any more questions. And so I think we can probably wrap it up. Are we good, April?
Yeah, I did a good job.
Yes, we're good. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for tonight's episode on Cuba. Next week's destination, where are we headed next week?
Japan.
It's Japan.
Yeah.
That's where we're headed.
Okay.
Japan.
Yay.
Watch and sign up to join us with Sheila as we discuss her travels to Japan.
Wonderful. Thanks, everybody.
All righty.
Have a great night.
All
Thanks,
right.
Bev.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.